Welcome to Fintech Uncut, the quiz show with candid commentary on the biggest fintech and financial services news of the week that was. Disclaimer: this show is created purely for entertainment purposes and contains segments of sarcasm, satire, parody, and humor. Even if you don't think any of it is funny, the creators do not accept any responsibility or liability for the accuracy of any content shared and reminded you to always fact-check everything yourself. And now, it's over to your quiz master.
Hello everyone, welcome to Fintech Uncut, the quiz show with candid commentary on the week's biggest fintech and financial services stories with the wise guy, the other guy, and exceptionally, McJudge, or Judge Wasim. Wasim Mushtaq is the former transformation lead financial markets at Standard Chartered Bank. So for the first time, we have a banker in the room. How will this affect the voting? You'll find out in this episode. My name is Rick Koekelbergs, the host of the day. We have Judge Wasim, Chris, the wise guy Skinner, and Andrew, the other guy Forcer. Let's start with the very first question. Stripe tends to do things differently from others from the very beginning of its existence. What's their latest surprise?
I'm getting off to an early start on this one because I know this one. I'm sure I know this one. So Stripe made a big splash when they first launched by saying integrate with just 7 lines of code. So as a result of that, they've chosen the White Stripes as their brand ambassador, because the White Stripes have just been nominated to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for 2023. And you know, 7 Nation Army and all that? Da, 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 da.
Da, da.
Don't go there, Andrew. Don't go there.
It's a bit like a buzzer. The buzzer we don't hear in Chris Skinner's case.
Yeah, so
Well,
that's a close, but not really, Andrew. So that's a no at the moment.
I mean, I was thinking, because I followed Stripe for so many years, and I think they're a fantastic fintech unicorn. But a little known fact is that when they first got together, the Collison brothers were thinking of calling the company Skid, but then nobody wanted a skid mark.
Oh, 5 points for being funny there, Chris.
I think that the big news was there was a news story this week that Elon Musk has finally assembled a team, a small team, to build their payments infrastructure for Twitter. And I think the reality is that behind the scenes, they're just going to integrate Stripe and do it like that because, you know, Twitter needs to save some money at the moment. I mean, they've just been sued by a whole lot of companies for not paying rent, including apparently the Crown Real Estate is suing them, being sued by the King of England. That's so yeah, I think they need to save some cash and just throw in those 7 lines of code and get Stripe going as their payments infrastructure.
So
No,
Elon
if I was-
Musk thought 7 lines of code means a team of 7 people will do.
Probably.
If I was Stripe, I would just ignore Elon Musk and Twitter, even though we have to mention them every few episode. I'd focus on the gaming industry. So maybe it's something like they're launching a payments API for kids in Minecraft, because my children are constantly asking me to buy Steve, Alex, Huggy Wuggy, Kissy Missy. And if you've no idea what I'm talking about, you don't have kids of the right age.
I'm just about to find out, actually. My son's 4, my daughter's 7, and they're starting to talk about Minecraft moving on from Pokemon Go and things of that nature. So I guess I'm going to find out soon.
Oh, and Rick's getting into that in a couple of years' time as well. His kids are still small, but you've got all that in front of you.
And
Right,
bear in
guys.
mind
Yeah. So at the
gaming
moment,
industry
at the moment, you're all wrong. Does anyone actually know the answer to this one?
Well, I think in reality, Amazon's probably going to buy Stripe. Amazon and Stripe announced last week or so that they were doubling down on their payments partnership. And it would probably be a good idea for Amazon to buy Stripe because Stripe's struggling a bit at the moment. They had set themselves an IPO target, and the market's not quite right for an IPO at the moment, but it's come to light that they've got a big tax bill to pay. And the surprising thing they're doing different is they're trying to raise funding on a 30% down round just to pay their tax bill. Not sure that's going to work out for them. I think a private acquisition is going to be better. Is that closer to the real story?
That is bang on, Andrew, and correct. And interesting about the Amazon piece as well. You're right. I think I read something as well. They will become the partner for the US, Europe, and Canada. So that will be interesting. Also, I've not seen before raises to pay a tax bill before on a 30% down round. I think some investors, especially, I don't know in VCs, but in banking industry for looking high net worth are raising some eyebrows, but I think they probably still want to stay involved in this. But yeah, interesting, but also correct. So Andrew, I give that to you. So a quick breakdown on that round. Chris, you got 5 because you were funny and I learned something. Okay. Andrew, you were also, I learned something and it was interesting and it was correct. So you got 8 on that one at the moment. So 8 by Rick. Sorry, we didn't hear too much from you. So I'm going to give you 0 for now. So hopefully you could.
Well, let me tell you something new. I don't need a vote. I'm the host of the show.
No, I still want to score you.
He doesn't.
I'm scoring everyone.
fat
Because I have 2 young kids, and I score everyone in the room. So just
all right, fair enough.
That's going to be fun.
Next question, my friends. People in the scene, neobank, fintech scene, know that Monzo and Starling have quite a bit in common. What's the holy grail that Starling found and Monzo claims to be close to finding?
I reckon this has to be you can't say Holy Grail without thinking of Monty Python if you're my age. So in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and you think about Monty Python, they have the Lumberjacks song. And so I think they've actually created a song about banking in the style of Monty Python, like, I'm a fintech banker and I'm okay. We're open all night and open all day. Something like that.
Sounds like a short video to me.
I think that's probably a different show altogether, Chris, but close, but not close enough. But you've got points for being funny. I should have added an extra point for singing, but maybe next time.
I was going to say, Chris, didn't you do a whole series of short musical clips at one stage? I'm remembering that.
I've still got fintech karaoke on my blog, which for about 2 months I was creating songs based on stupid lyrics about banking and fintech. Yeah, maybe I should do a new one.
Yeah, with ChatGPT, game a lot easier now.
I think we're going to have to put the link to fintech karaoke just as a blast from the past. Put that in the show notes. I've just
back to the question now, because
back to the question. I think
is there a question?
Well, the holy grail that Starling found, that Monzo has actually now achieved, is getting a mention on Fintech Uncut. I mean, we've spoken about Starling a lot of times before, but never about Monzo. So actually, Monzo's achieved that holy grail. They've got a mention by us. F you, Monzo.
Yeah, I think talking about Monzo and Starling, and again, I'm very familiar with what happened and the background. I reckon that it's Tom Blomfield has found a great place to buy chicken takeaway. And if you don't know the story of what happened with Anne and Tom, Google it.
Oh, that's gonna.
Or pizzas, maybe, right? Or some. What was that?
It is actually pretty bank related. It's not the first bank we're mentioning where the branch is being replaced by a fast food chain. That was a Pizza Hut, a branch from NetWest, if I remember
actually,
well.
Talking about Tom Blomfield and Starling, which of course Tom started at Starling. He started working with Anne. I think that the Holy Grail is an exec team that actually sticks around. Because if you look at the amount of churn at Monzo at their exec team level, not that Starling's that much better, but at least they've got a little bit more stability. So perhaps that's the Holy Grail of success.
No. I think it's far more related to profit and the fact that Starling's been doing pretty well, out of the gates, becoming a stable challenger bank to the big banks that's profitable. And Monzo is just about getting there now. I don't know the numbers, but I was reading the other day that they're turning it around. They're getting into profitability. They're becoming a proper bank.
Correct, Chris. That is correct. So, recent news. I think the CEO of TS Animal was talking about profitability and getting to a positive kind of profit and ROI this year, and they are predicted to do that. It's interesting actually, as being a banker and looking at it, I felt that Starling did a really smart play in terms of SME banking and being able to leverage bounce back loans, and Siebel's they were able to build up their book with not a lot of risk. And there was some profit in that, whilst Monzo lost the trick on that one, I think. But now, even in Monzo, I was looking at their business bank accounts, which they are actually doing a lot of advertisements on it. I think they're going to double down on that. But also, Monzo's got a lot more customers in terms of the actual ecosystem. So yeah, I think they are going to be in a good place going forward. And yeah, I think that's correct.
An interesting stat just about neobanks. I mean, there's an interesting stat saying less than 5% of neobanks globally have actually managed to achieve profitability. But the interesting thing for me isn't that. The interesting thing is Zopa, who I haven't heard about for years. Zopa actually achieved profitability just 21 months after getting their UK banking license. Zopa absolutely nailed it. They're sort of like the silent rise from underneath, and Monzo, Starling get all the glory all the time, and Revolut, and yet Zopa just quietly slips in there, and they're doing another raise at the moment as well.
Revolut isn't getting that much glory.
Well, I said news and PR, not that much glory. You're 100% right there.
There's two things in there, which is Starling and Zopa are both clearly getting loans to deposits ratios, and the loan ratio has to be in there. If you don't have loans, then you're not profitable, because all you have is deposits with interest, and that's where Monzo and Revolut have begun with challenges, and that balance is changing now. But it's interesting, Wasim, I'd be interested in your view, because you mentioned Starling with the bounce back loans, which were the pandemic loans backed by government, which had no risk for the bank. And Anne Boden, the bank, has been taken to Treasury to be challenged about that. So there is kind of a bit of a stain there, or do you feel that that's irrelevant?
No, it is relevant. It's funny because whilst I am a banker, at that time I was at Fintech. I was like an interim CEO, SME lender, and we were doing enterprise finance guarantee loans. And 2 weeks before, we changed it to a Siebel's lending. Now, the interesting thing is for Siebel's, you had to do a full credit underwrite. For bounce back loan, honestly, it was a bit of a joke. It was like a tick box. Yes, I do have this much revenue. I do have this much turnover, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't an underwrite, and it's 100%. So, secured by the big banks. There was I think in the market in general, and raised some eyebrows when she was saying, like, I think it was like 30%, I think, are potentially at risk of default. I can't remember what it was. But I think a lot of banks struggled with that one in terms of volumes. When I created the company, at the other company, we were planning to have like 30, 40 applications a week. We had more than 1,000 or 2,000 in the first week. Got smashed.
Wow.
Banks weren't capable. And it was impossible to gear up teams in that environment as well. So I think she's probably I think across the bank, everyone had that issue, but there was a bit more vocal in it. Whilst others were behind the scenes. But I think overall, I think that was a lesson for everyone in general in the banking industry, that you need to do underwriting. And look at it now in terms of buy now, pay later, and the headache there, and now trying to understand how to merge that with credit bureaus to get a credit assessment done. We should learn from our mistakes, and everything should have some type of assessment. I was speaking to some people a few weeks ago in another event, and it was colleagues from the Lending Standard Board, and they're going to be releasing some articles about just more responsibility in the industry before allowing people to get into debt. I know in terms of age, I'm probably a little bit younger, but in the 70s, we had the whole thing in terms of the credit card. It just happened all again. It was just buy now, pay later now. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but in terms of bank in general, I think Starling still is a positive news. And I think you mentioned, Andrew, about Revolut. I think that's one of the companies that are not actually firing, but they're hiring. I read an article. I think there's 1,600 new roles being available at the moment. So yeah, I think it's an interesting place to be in neobanks as they move into their next stage of evolution, growing up and becoming
At least
You know.
some of them.
young adults and not teenagers. But yeah, we'll see.
So what's the scores on the doors?
Right, on that round, I'll give you for question 2. Andrew, you had a 2 plus 3, so I learned something and you're funny 5. Chris, you smashed it. You got 2 for I learned something, 3 for being funny, 5 for being correct, and 2 again for learning something. You got 12. At the moment, Andrew, you've got 13. Chris, you've got 17. Rick, sorry, you're on 0 again. Apologies. Can you have to up your game a bit? Now, remember, if you're hilarious, you get 10 points, right? So you really maybe think about that.
It's probably best to keep the suspense and not give us interim scores until right at the end. Just for the suspense, so that
Talking about suspense, we're gonna go to the controversial round now. Next question. Iran is not the most common country in the news of fintech, and that changed this week. What did they announce?
Oh, sorry, I burst before you finished, but when you said what changed this week, is it that they're launching a digital bank in Israel?
Not so sure about that one.
I'm not sure what.
5 points for Chris.
I don't know if that's naughty or funny.
Yeah.
I'm confused now, Chris. I don't know. I think it's both. All right, okay.
Obscure. And I think the thing is that the rest of the world has anti-money laundering regulation, whereas Iran has money laundering regulation. You have to launder money. That's the whole point of being in banking and fintech there. So they launched the first money laundering fintech accelerator to be able to attract talent to help them launder money, because they need money and they can't get money at the moment, and inflation's going crazy and things like that, sanctions and everything. So it's got to be a money laundering accelerator that they've announced. Yeah,
I think you just got more controversial than the actual answer.
I don't know. I mean, I was in Iran a couple of times 10 years ago, and I told the government that they should invest everything in Bitcoin. So I'm fairly sure that having done that, they've now become a very rich country. They don't need money, Andrew. They've got all their money in crypto.
No.
You guys aren't even close. I'll be honest with you. And you've both been naughty. I just want to be clear.
Okay, it's down to I think that they saw the popularity of the gold dispensing ATM that was rolled out in India. There was a news story in that about a couple of weeks ago, whereby they've got these gold dispensing ATMs. You can walk up to them. You can pay with actual Bitcoin or
It's actually not a new thing. I heard about
currency.
it years ago.
Exactly, but the big thing was that they've rolled out a whole lot of these. These were the first ones rolled out in India, and I think Iran's looked at India and gone, hey, that's a good idea with our monetary value depressing and all the rest. And also it makes sense because there's another news article that says central banks bought the most gold last year since 1967. So obviously there is a push towards gold-backed currencies, not these Bitcoins and Yoshi coins and Yogi Bear and Skinner coins and all of those. People actually want gold-backed currency now. So I think that they're rolling out ATMs back with gold. Makes sense to me.
So you've said something there that's quite interesting. So you've got some points, but also you're kind of getting towards a right answer on that one. But I think keep
Still
going.
pretty far off.
Chris. Well, you mentioned gold, so there's something going on there. Chris?
Well, I blogged about this a while ago, and so I reckon the real answer is that there's a new agenda around the world, in that SWIFT, for example, is very much European and American. China has its alternatives, as does India. And Russia has created some partnerships to try and create cross-border money transmissions outside the SWIFT network, because they've been sanctioned and they're off the network. So maybe Iran, because they're also off the network, these countries are starting to work together to create new payments transmissions networks that are outside SWIFT.
Yes, correct, 100%. So this is actually really interesting. My take on this very quickly. I've worked in global banks a lot, and obviously, the AML as well in terms of like the sanctions. If you think about where we are in terms of our networks and payments, will we need SWIFT in its current form in the future? Are we moving somewhere else in terms of all the payment rails, embedded finance and things of that nature? And at the end of the day, the economy still need to do business. Iran, Russia makes sense. I think they have a border as well, and they're both two very fuel-rich countries and resources. I wouldn't be surprised if Kazakhstan gets in there. I heard about India wants to start paying, from their Indian rupee, in terms of buying Russian resources for oil and gas. If India goes, Pakistan might, and Russia and China, that whole part of the world, there's a lot of east and west kind of divide going on there. And look at all of the innovation happening in MENA and APAC at the moment.
We have quite a few of these side routes already. It's not new as such. China has with their partners. Russia starts building it now with their partners, and the West is having SWIFT.
And what's also interesting, there's been a long discussion about a Asian currency union to create something like a euro. The same in MENA, the African currency union. So we are going to see much more regional partnerships.
Yeah, 100%. I could definitely see it going that way, and I think it makes sense also because there'll be more stability, honestly, in those regions, and that will only benefit economies and the banking industry, hopefully.
But unions, when I could just as easily use Monero or Bitcoin or Ethereum or some other decentralized currencies. And in fact, that's a big theme of mine at the moment, which is decentralized versus centralized, and which route will win.
Yep.
Time will tell. Rick, anything to add to that point? I really want to give you some points. But points for the question overall, Chris, you were Andrew, you were a naughty, and I learned something, so -3. Chris, you were funny, you were naughty, and you were correct, so 3. Rick, you were funny, I think, but
5.
I gave you 3 anyway.
Thank you. Next question, my friends. Current economic situation isn't the best place to be in for tech companies. We heard many times in this show and elsewhere that could be an opportunity for banks to get hold of some of the solutions or talent that's coming available. Not sure if anyone expected what happened in the UK this week. Can you guess what it was?
I know this one. So we're talking about talent, right? The MasterCard product lead for their NFT product is now available. He quit and he minted his resignation letter as an NFT on MasterCard's product and sent it to his superiors, to his manager. True story.
And it's being promoted by Boris Johnson at crypto conferences.
Yeah, most definitely.
Available on OpenSea now as a NFT.
Andrew, is that true?
It's a true story. It's going to be in the show notes.
Well, talking true stories, I heard an interesting thing about the Conservatives, because the news might be that the Conservatives have been replaced by the monster raving loony party, which you may think is ridiculous. And the UK does have a monster raving loony party.
You wouldn't tell
if you look at the monster raving loony party's agenda for election, and I think it's about 30 or 40 years ago, most of what they were campaigning for has actually been implemented. So maybe they're not loonies after all.
What's the name of that party?
Monster Raving
Loony Party.
Interesting.
I'd vote for them because I think they're far more sensible than the Conservatives. Yeah.
Did they vote for Brexit?
I didn't vote for Brexit.
No,
absolutely.
That party.
Oh, the Monster Raving Loony Party. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at their agenda. But I was talking to someone in the Conservative Party this week, and they were telling me that the agenda they had 30, 40 years ago has all been pretty much tick-marked and implemented. Just no one's gone back and checked. So I actually think maybe it's that the UK now has a new Prime Minister called John Cleese.
I'd vote for him. Actually, he'd definitely make a better Prime Minister than the ones that we've had recently.
Chris, I'm going to have to check their manifesto and just to double check on that point. The Monster Party, Monster Party.
Well, I think the crazy thing is that the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, had
You have to be
announced
careful how you say that.
Yeah, I did. I was very careful to
Hunt.
enunciate my words there, so I didn't
With
get a naughty deduction.
Yeah, Hunt.
He said he wants to turn the UK into the world's next Silicon Valley, and he actually specifically calls out Monzo and Revolut as shining examples. But they've just put the interest rate up another 0.5%, and according to the IMF, the UK is going to be the only major economy in the world that is expected to shrink in 2023. So how the heck do those even line up with each other? You know, he says one thing, but the government does something else. I mean, what the
I'm a
hell's
mathematician. I would say we're living in a world where 1 + 1 does not equal 2 these days, for sure.
Yeah, it equals
Especially not if you're doing the voting.
I'll show you my spreadsheet after.
Full transparency there from Wasim.
Shall we get back to the essence of the question?
Well, it's interesting.
Kind of, not really. I'm sure you guys.
No, that was my question for the guys. Shall we get back to the essence of the question?
So it is actually aligned with my Silicon Valley statement by the Chancellor Hunt, because he's saying world's next Silicon Valley, but they've just withdrawn the funding from Tech Nation being a not-for-profit accelerator that was largely government funded. But that's not the real story. The real story is the kicker. They've taken the funding and given it to Barclays, a fully commercial for-profit organization. So they've taken it away from a not-for-profit and they've given it to a single for-profit commercial organization as Barclays, a bunch of bankers. I mean, yeah, I can't compute their statements and then their actions. They just don't add up. It's a terrible loss to see Tech Nation having to close its doors. It spawned some good work, some good stuff. They sponsored the tech visas. So we're trying to build Silicon Valley, world's next Silicon Valley, but now people can't easily get the visas anymore. The Tech Nation was how people got their visas, their work visas for technical skills and things like this. Chris, what's your views on this? I mean, I'm really disappointed at this whole move.
Well, I agree with everything you said, except for one thing, which is the collective noun for bankers is a wench. So we've got to get that right to start with. But then secondly, I blogged this week about Extinction Rebellion, and I've been supporting them a little bit through the last year because I think funding fossil fuels is not a great thing to do, particularly new fossil fuel projects. And the number one miscreant in that area is Barclays Bank, who Extinction Rebellion say are criminals because they're funding a lot of new fossil fuel projects as the number one leading provider across Europe of lending to those markets. Interestingly, HSBC has stopped funding new fossil fuel projects. And they wrote a letter to Nigel Higgins, the chair of Barclays Bank, saying, can you give us your feedback on the fact that the 7 people who were charged with breaking your bank's windows in Canary Wharf were discharged by the judge this week as not having a problem? They got their sentences suspended for 2 years on the basis that they're not law breakers, they're lawmakers. And it's a very interesting comment around activist consumers changing the way we think about things by changing the law through their activist movements. And to give Barclays, this funding taken away from Tech Nation is another example of, there's obviously an old boys club between the government ministers and the banking community that's supporting each other behind the scenes.
Yes, Andrew, first of all, you are correct. But Chris, everything you've said, I think, is correct as well. Full transparency, I am 8 years in Barclays back in the day, both in operations and their CIO office. And I was there where they launched kind of Barclays Rises. as well. I think what Barclays have done overall in like the digital ecosystem and fintechs is a good thing overall in the Old Street Shoreditch area, but giving a government funding to a bank that makes billions of pounds profit and is a for-profit business is not a good thing. I think Technation, is an amazing entity and they should be supported. And when I saw the news, I was quite surprised and shocked as well. It was on the cards though, like this came out in Q last year, 3-4 months ago, and there were news articles about it, but then it kind of went quiet. It's a shame where it's got to, and I'm hoping Technation pivots their business model and the name and the resources still stay. And I think these articles have like made everyone a little bit surprised and shocked. And I think the people behind the scenes are trying to work and find ways for this to pivot out of it. But yeah, you're both correct on that one. But Andrew, you actually answered the question. Shall I give scores though on that one? Andrew, you were 2 + 2 + 5, 9. Chris, 5 + 2 + 5. Because you were correct on many things. So you got 12. So you're racing ahead at the moment. I'll keep quiet. Rick?
I am the wise guy.
I guess we can now also say that it's scientifically proven that you are better in this game than Andrew. All right. My next question. Or did you have points for me?
Yeah, I gave you 1.
Awesome. All right. I have 2 more questions. Next up, an Oxford degree is almost automatically a guarantee for future success. Yet, for the Dutch Guido Wiersma, that success came from a rather surprising angle, and it was also very short term. What happened?
He's opened a bank for tulip bulbs.
You've been chatting to Dave Birch, haven't you? He's always on about the blooming tulip bulb thing and carrying on all about.
Dave Birch knows all of the history, from the wooden tack sticks right through to Attila the Hun.
The Yapstones, story.
Yeah.
That's his favourite one, the Yapstones. It's always because he's always yapping.
I mean,
It's a
maybe
thing.
being
It's also in the
Oxford
Museum of a
student-
Central Bank in Belgium.
Yeah, I know it's a thing, but Dave yapping,
Yeah.
definitely.
Maybe being an Oxford student who's Dutch, maybe he's opened a bank for dykes.
Ooh,
A bank
the
for
Dutch just stick the finger in the dike. Come
the
on,
dike.
-5.
Yeah, to stop the water coming through.
-50 for that one. I reckon he must be the guy because you said that his it was a surprising angle. So I think he's the guy who came up with this idea of chatty checkouts for the Dutch supermarket chain Jumbo. And which is a real thing, by the way. Chatty checkouts is for people who actually want to talk in the queue. But I think his success must have been short-lived because who the hell wants to stand in a supermarket queue and chat? I reckon that after
Old people like you, Andrew.
Yeah, I think after they tried it once or twice, they thought, that's why we've got fast checkouts. Yeah, let's rather. I reckon the idea's probably just fallen on its, because that's the thing with these academics. They come up with something that sounds good until they implement it, and it's like.
Well, on a serious note, it was actually a pretty good idea, but we can discuss that later.
Well, a true story that many years ago, I was working at NCR, and we were looking at building multimedia ATMs, and then realized that was ridiculous because the last thing people want at an ATM is someone standing in front of them, chatting or doing stuff that takes longer than 3 seconds. You just want a transaction that's swiftly done to get cash at that time. But it was looking at how to diversify away from cash. But going back to the question, if it's not for cannabis or bicycles, because I'm just trying to think of all the things I can think of that relate to the Netherlands.
Well, I was rather thinking about things that relate to students, and I know that I run a whole number of websites, and they're constantly being hacked by bots, and usually when I do a trace route back again, it's coming from blimming universities, because student hackers like to practice by just trying to break other people's websites. They think it's in the interest of academics. So I think that because 2022 recent report was the biggest ever year for crypto hacking, with more than 3.2 billion pounds stolen worldwide, crypto hacking, I reckon that this person used his degree and applied it to crypto hacking. And he's, am I getting closer at least?
You're getting closer. I would say it is linked to crypto. I'm not sure if it's linked to hacking per se, because I don't want to give away the answer, but you're getting close.
Chris is the crypto king, so I'm going to let him swoop in with the answer there, because he's got to be all over this story.
I am all over it, because I was actually involved in the creation of IOTA, which is a cryptocurrency for the Internet of Things, and then fell out in big time due to various arguments over what they were trying to achieve. But I know that this PhD student, Wibo Wiersma, I think is his name, who's Dutch, created a website to transact in IOTA cryptocurrencies, but then siphoned the whole lot off into his own account and was using other currencies from Bitcoin and Monero and such like to take the money from the investors and basically defraud them. And I think there's about 94 investors, and he took about over £2 million and was in court. And I've got no idea how the judge would understand a word that I've just said.
Chris, you're right. Yeah, this gentleman, or maybe not gentleman actually, abused his power and skills in IT and technology, and was basically ciphering out and getting the passwords and then making payments out. He actually got 4.5 years in prison by the Oxford Crown Court. And the judge said, "You are an expert in IT and computer sciences. The fact of the matter is that you decided to abuse your skills in order to steal. This is dishonesty at the highest level." Again, you know, I've studied at Oxford Side Business School. I did the fintech course. I can guarantee you they didn't teach anything like this. So yeah, I was quite surprised and shocked about this one.
Why aren't all politicians hauled up by judges the same way? You know, they use their skills to steal money from the public all the time, not pay taxes and all the rest. So why aren't politicians hauled up the same way?
The voting is over, Andrew. The voting is over, my friend.
You can't accuse politicians of being dirty. Just because politics comes from the Latin poly for many, ticks, blood-sucking parasites.
Naughty.
And correct. So it's -5 +5.
Balance is an art.
On that,
Alrighty.
okay, on that round, Chris, I'm not going to get into all the pluses and minuses, but your overall was +9. Sorry, Andrew was +9. Chris, you're a bit naughty there, and you were correct, but at the end of it, you were -6. Rick, you smashed it, mate. You got
Really?
10.
How?
I'll tell you
Did you
after. We don't have time for that. We don't have time for this. But you got
Bryce,
10.
I was just thinking, we are getting to the last question. I'm starting to understand you better and better. So you're more than welcome for new shows as well.
Appreciate it.
All right, last question, my friends. Something special going on at Meta's Reality Labs. Can you guess what it is?
Who uses Facebook?
My buzzer's not working for some reason, but I'll jump in anyway. Is it that they've decided to create a virtual dodo? And that I did see news this week that there is actually a company called Colossal Biosciences. It's a gene editing company that's getting the genes from the soil of Mauritius to actually recreate a real dodo and bring it back from extinction. They've got a valuation of $2 billion, but I can imagine, you know, that Mark Zuckerberg and Meta would be really keen to have the virtual dodo world to go with the real dodo world that's been recreated from gene editing.
If I had the technology, I would go for a cyber tiger.
But when
I'll go for Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was going to say, when are people going to learn? Jurassic Park and Hollywood is not an instruction manual for the future. Good grief! Stop building these things.
I think
I,
just, just on a serious note, just to finish that one about colossal biosenses, they are actually creating the dodo and a mammoth.
Jeez.
Oh,
Actually, Wasim, it's nothing new. We have two dinosaurs in this room.
wow,
Ooh,
hilarious, hilarious.
minus 20.
You've got 10
No.
points.
And by
Hilarious.
the quizmaster there. No, I think, look, if it's big news and it's to do with metaverse, then it's got to be that the avatars are finally getting legs. Because if any of you have ever seen any clips of Zuck's metaverse, the avatars, yeah, exactly, they only exist as bodies and arms. There are no legs. So if it's big news, it's got to be surely legs. Legs. Is he giving people legs at last?
Well, you have to ask, does the metaverse have legs?
Well, now there's a good question. Does it have legs? Is it getting anywhere? I think, just to mix in our favorite non-sponsor at the moment, I reckon Zuck is going to use Elon's Neuralink thing to transfer himself directly into the metaverse and just, incinerate his real life body, just so that he can finally prove a single use case for the metaverse in the future. He's going to put himself in there and then live forever.
Well, you're very close, because I think it's to do with the fact that Mark Zuckerberg has a doppelganger who's actually going to work in the labs.
You guys are close. You're hovering.
So,
Who's
the
gonna do it?
shocking thing is that meta reality, the labs, is losing Facebook $1 billion a month, and they're projecting that those losses will continue at least that level for the rest of 2023. What?
Correct. And also mad. Chris?
What are they doing with it is the question, because you don't see the results, and I kind of
Building
feel
legs.
yeah, but they've kind of lost their way in that obviously there's far too much money swashing around in their treasury to invest in stuff that doesn't make sense. $1 billion a month lost in developing the metaverse, which, as you said, Andrew, doesn't really exist, doesn't have legs. And equally, it reminds me going way back to the 2000s when Second Life became a huge, big thing. And Second Life disappeared because it didn't have governance, it didn't have structure. And my question is, the governance and structure and regulatory requirements that you need in the metaverse will never be met by Meta.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I just wouldn't invest in it. I just wouldn't invest in it.
Just to slip in one minor thing, I have actually seen one very exciting banking, finance, and fintech services related company building in Web3 and Metaverse. And it's called Lifeties. And I've invited their CEO to come onto a banking scene after work. And I'm just waiting for her response, and we can let people know. I think it's going to be a fascinating session, really having real world impact from things that you do in their metaverse. So look up Lifeties and come and hear about them on the banking scene after work.
Just out of interest, do I have to wear a tie?
Anyway,
I can't remember who actually gave the correct answer or not, whether it was Andrew or Chris. I think you both kind of got it right. Just sort of from my perspective here, 1 billion is a crazy burn rate per month. I run transformation, I run projects, programs. Clear thing is you need to have clear business outcomes. There needs to be a strategy. You need to have some use cases. And for me, 1 billion, it seems to me that the consultants coming in are just charging an arm and a leg, and I think they're just printing and losing money.
the wrong consultants, because a good consulting firm would advise to sponsor Fintech Uncut with only a fraction of that billion a month.
They might be coming next week after my performance, but we'll see. But anyway,
I won't name the bank was in, but I think you'll be familiar with the story I'm just about to give you, which is one bank I worked with laid off like 500 staff in technology, and then within a month had hired a whole bunch of consultants to come in that cost them 10 times as much, and just kind of go, some people just don't understand or think about these things.
Happens all the time. Honestly, I've seen it so many times, especially in program management and large transformations. You try to, it's all to do with the budget cycle. You're trying to show a positive ROI and you realize you can't actually deliver it because you don't have the resources, and then you cut back in. It's mad. It's always swings and roundabouts. But yes, on that one, on that answer, Andrew, you had 16. Chris, you pipped at the end with 20. Rick, you did a good showing again, 16.
All right.
I do have all the final scores on the doors if you want. Shall I
Yes,
go
please.
for it? In third place, because he didn't actually do much in the first 3 questions, or 4, is Rick at 30 points. But well done. You're third, but you're also last. So just think about that.
I'm the host.
Andrew, second at 44 points. Chris wins at 46 points, because at the last few seconds, I decided to give you a +5. I think you were correct on something else you said, and I learned something. So really close, guys. And I'm going to be sending the spreadsheet to you all later on to scrutinize and just audit, if you don't mind, for me, so you can just double check against the recording.
We'll put it in the show notes as well. Total transparency.
All good.
Thank you all. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you, Wasim, for joining us and for being so transparent in your scoring. I cannot wait for more international news coming up very soon. If you like our show, make sure you register on our website for the newsletter to be the first to know about new episodes. Make sure that you like our shows in your favorite podcast channel. If you're a really big fan, have a look at the merchandise that we have on our website. We start to see more and more posts on Twitter and LinkedIn with people buying shirts, buying mugs, etc. of Fintech Uncut. Really lovely. We truly appreciate it. And as a last message, don't forget to subscribe on whatever channel you're on. This was the 10th episode of Fintech Uncut. We hope to entertain you, your colleagues, your friends, your connections and followers, your cats and dogs, and many more very soon again. Bye-bye.